Every day on stream, I get asked what my favorite opening is, and the answer to that is the 4 pawns attack. When the line was first discovered, it was almost considered a refutation against the king's Indian defense. White invests Tempe to develop the center pawns to gain his space advantage, while Black prioritizes development and king safety. White's goal is to crush Black down the center of the board, given the space advantage with the 4 pawns in the center, and Black's goal is to strike quickly and open up the position before White is able to solidify their space advantage in the center. That was a very brief explanation of the ideas behind the 4 pawns attack for both colors. This video is not going to focus on the theory of the 4 pawns attack, but the context is important because the game that I'm about to show you and analyze demonstrates the importance of understanding the ideas behind the openings that you're playing. Every opening sets you up with a different pawn structure and a different setup to execute certain ideas in the middle game. If you don't understand what those ideas are, or if your opponent doesn't understand what their ideas are, it leaves room for one side to potentially get an advantage if they're able to get their ideas off faster. So in this game, I'll demonstrate the importance of understanding why your pieces are set up the way they are in an opening and executing your ideas in a timely manner. Secretly, I'm also kind of showing off how nice the 4 pawns attack can be, especially if your opponent doesn't really know how to play against it, because I'm kind of biased. But regardless, I hope you enjoy the live footage of the game, followed by the analysis after. Alright, let's try to see if I can beat this person. 250. Okay, 4 pawns. There's hope. There's hope. Okay, if here I have to be careful about this, maybe. I mean, I have knight c4. I want to, or, yeah, I have knight c4. Let's figure this. Hopefully I don't botch it, but it is my favorite, whether I botch it or not. I assume here. There's bishop b5, I guess. I want to go e5. Takes. Wait, is the knight trapped? YOLO. I mean, I think a good exchange at least, right? Ooh, actually, if they take care of d6, then they get a clean rook. Are they gonna take here? Actually, they could go here, I guess. Ooh, wait, okay. Takes d6. Then I win a clean rook. What? I'll take it. It's a whole rook here. Then they have to go back, and then we go there. Leave. Okay. We did it. We got a W. Let's go. Alright, so in this game, as you'll see, most of the start of this game was just all book moves. There's different lines that Black can play here. c5 is possible, e5 is possible, rook e8, there's c6. There's a bunch of different main variations, but c5 is the most popular. So we continue through with book moves. And here's the importance of understanding why you're playing moves, not just playing them. There's different options in this position, but knight d2 is one of the main moves. Just for a little bit of theory, queen c2 looks like a natural move but isn't really good due to complications with knight takes e4, which it looks like you're just winning a piece at the moment. However, after bishop f5, there's this really strong pin here for black, and this gets really complicated for white to defend, and normally you end up just giving back the knights and you're in a worse position with this pawn on d5 just really weak. So knight d2 is the most common move. This also helps you set up for potential ideas in the middle game, which you might have noticed that I ended up executing in the game. Here my opponent plays the move bishop to d7, and a very common pawn move that black tries to go for against the 4 pawns attack is this move b5. Because my goal is to attack in the center, and I have a very nice pawn structure in the center currently, black can't really fight back in the center, so they try to fight back on a different side of the board, that being the queen side. If they get in b5, it's very annoying because b4 is a big threat because my knight is very crucial to defending this pawn on e4. And if they get off b5, even if it seems like my knight and bishop are looking at this pawn, the problem is this knight again is overloaded because it's defending the pawn on e4. So a very common move to stop any plans of b5 temporarily is for white to play the move a4. My opponent plays knight a6, which is very common. The goal is to normally go knight c7, again, trying to load up for this pawn break. And then my opponent put the move knight to b4, which I didn't quite understand the idea behind this move in the game. And you might remember some of my thoughts. I was debating bishop f3 here. I was a little worried about knight d3. It kind of seemed like I was getting in my space. But with the move knight to c4, I wasn't too worried because if this were to happen, my knight's on a square that it wants to be on. My bishop's on a square that it wants to be on. I'm attacking a pawn on d6. I'm attacking the knights. And overall, if I end up trading off this bishop for this knight, it's really not the worst trade for me because this bishop's not doing too hot. You know, it hasn't done too much this game. And I have a very nice center with these 3 minor pieces on ideal squares. So after knight b4, I continue with my plan. Bishop f3, and my opponent plays the move queen to c7. Now this is where understanding where you want your pieces to be is important, because after you castle, if I just leave my pieces here, they're not ideal squares. As I mentioned before, one of the downsides to the 4 pawns attack is your opponent can prioritize development faster than you. I spent moves getting my pawns on nice squares in the center of the board. However, my rooks, my bishop, my queen, this knight, they're not on great squares yet. So I need to be very quick and very efficient with where I put my pieces to. Therefore, knight c4, a very good move. So as you can see, from the start of the game, it reroutes from g1, and it goes on this mission all the way to c4. A very common knight maneuver in this variation. What is my main goal as white? We talked about white wants to drive through in the center of the board as fast as possible. So therefore, given how all my pieces are lined up, e5 is a very common break. If I have enough defenders for this pawn on d5, I don't need the pawn on e4 to be here. So if I have my knight on c4, the plus is that it not only supports the e5 push, it puts pressure on this pawn on d6, which is a backwards pawn for black, therefore a liability. So now I've also put my bishop on f3, which also defends the pawn on d5, so therefore if I ever push my pawn up, I don't have to worry about the protection of this pawn. So my pieces are on great squares so far. Again, my opponent's very hooked on the idea of trying to go for b5. However, they're a bit too slow. Here I actually made one blunder this game by playing the move a5 right away. I did not take very much time on this move. I thought, okay, if they're trying to play b5, I'm so used to them going for this idea. And I play a5 so they don't have this move, because then I can do en passant and just win the pawn. However, because my pawn's not on a4 anymore, the b5 square is a nice square for my opponent to drop their bishop on. And this would not be so good for me because now this pin is very annoying. And now they can either trade a very critical piece, or I'm going to have to take their bishop, which isn't great because now they get that pawn on b5. This pawn is weak and my knight gets kicked out. So that was the one mistake I made. e5 right away would have just been a lot stronger. I'm ready, I'm prepared for it. They don't have time to strike with b5. I'm threatening to take the knight, I'm threatening to take the pawn and threaten their queen. They don't have time to react to that. So had I played this right away, another problem with the bishop on d7 right now is that the knight cannot go back. And with the rook on e8, the knight can't go back. So the only really safe square is h5, which still loses them a whole pawn and exposes their king. So if takes happened, unless they want to give me the piece, the best save is knight h5. But after I win a clean pawn and expose their king, this pawn's under threat. Look at this beautiful center, these knights, this bishop's coming into the game, and this is just a killer position for whites. But I made the mistake of playing a5, though my opponent did not see bishop b5, which was kind of the only good move they have in this position, and they played rook a to d8, which preparing to line up your pieces in the center of the board, knowing that I'm going for this break, can be helpful. But if you don't calculate the extent of how powerful this break is, this move just doesn't really do anything, especially with this bishop in the way. So I immediately knew it was time to go for that break on e5, and black is in the same boat where this knight has no good squares to move to. Trade off pawns, and here they either give me the knight, maybe play a move like knight h5, or, as you might have seen when I was calculating in the game, rook takes e5, which this would be nice because if I play knight takes e5, queen takes e5, black is only down in exchange. This pawn is kind of weak, and again, I'm not very developed, so how big is white's advantage in this position? It's not that big. However, I have this very nice in-between move d6 because my d pawn is fully protected. I can cut off contact between the queen and the rook. Now whenever the queen moves, I just win a clean rook and I'm up an entire piece. And after this, it was basically GG's. My opponent decided to just play bishop c8, but it didn't really matter what they did. I was winning a rook either way. They decided to give me this rook instead of this rook. And as you can see, after I fast forward the game, I just slowly converted and won the game. But in this analysis, you can see within 20 moves, the game is basically already won. But it was kind of already won even before that, because the minute I was able to play this move e5, black just falls apart in the center, and they weren't able to get off any idea on the queen side that they were supposed to go for. And they also weren't able to pick apart my pawn structure in the center in time, because their pieces were basically in the way of the ideas they wanted to execute. So I just thought this was a beautiful game to demonstrate the importance of understanding your ideas beyond just the opening lines. I know a lot of people, especially in this day and age, put emphasis on openings. A lot of people love to learn different openings, different lines, and have this whole database of lines in their head. But if you don't understand why you're playing the moves you're playing, if you don't understand why your pieces are set up in certain ways, not just for your side, but also understanding your opponent's plans, your game can go wrong really quickly, as shown in this game. And obviously, the 4 pawns is just an amazing opening, in my personal opinion. But I hope you enjoyed this analysis. If you guys want more videos on the 4 pawns attack, if anyone is interested, let me know. Thank you so much for watching. Leave a like, comment, and subscribe, and I'll see you guys on the next one. Bye-bye.